Alright guys, so take a look at this bike. This is actually a CVO Street Glide with the 117. I'm actually going to take this one on a test drive. Wow, this thing is heavy. First impression. This is a heavy bike. Wow. Alright, so let's see. Alright, it helps to know how to start it. Alright. Wow, this one has a completely different stance. Alright. Wow. Alright, so this one's really interesting. This one seems very top heavy compared to the Fat Bob and the Fat Boy that I just took out. Apparently this is a $44,000 motorcycle. It has a really big friction zone, which is kind of interesting. Wow. So that was like first gear. Wow. This is super smooth. You can definitely feel the vibration from the engine on this one. This is interesting. Takes a little bit more getting used to this just because it's a bigger bike. Seat is really comfortable. Looks like we got 4 people in our group here. We're actually doing demos through Harley Davidson. Alright, let's see. It's interesting, you can go really fast in first gear. Alright, so I'm going to close my visor. So this is interesting. Actually get some interesting turbulence from the visor. Almost like a little buffeting or something, which is interesting. Alright, so I think I'm getting used to it. It's got some interesting floorboards. Brings my knees up really high on this one. Let's see, I think we're waiting for some people behind us. So I've been going through all the different bikes. I actually started on the trike, the Street Bob, the Fat Bob, the Fat Boy, and now this one. This is Street Glide CVO. So I actually did a Street Glide before, but it wasn't the CVO. This one's got all the fancy little upgrades on it. Actually, just take a look at the bike. As like someone went through and upgraded all the little amenities on it. Okay, so I don't know if I'm just too big for this bike as far as the wind, but I'm getting a lot of buffeting on this where it's hitting my helmet and kind of shaking it around like a paint shaker. Which is kind of interesting. So for me, on this bike, I think what I'd have to do is I'd have to get a taller windscreen. First impression. The other thing is, it's kind of interesting that wow, this thing is geared so low, you can almost take a corner in like first gear. Alright, so I like the corners. So it's interesting. I was actually on the Fat Boy and the Fat Bob. They had the really fat front tires, and it seemed like on those bikes they were really hard to take the corners. I did not like the corners on those. And then on my bike, the bike that I drive all the time, that's actually a 2007 Dyna Street Bob with a really skinny front tire. And it turns really good when you're moving kind of slow, you know, up until like 50 miles an hour or so. But then after that, it gets a little sketchy on the highway. And I like this one because the tire's like in between the Fat Boy, the Fat Bob, and the really skinny tire of my bike. All right, let's see. This is really nice turning. I love. It's like the perfect fatness of the perfect thickness of a tire in the front to really go around the corners with a lot of stability, yet with some sort of nimbleness where you really don't have to. Of course, this one seems like it's a lot more top heavy, so that, you know, sometimes I can artificially give you kind of the feeling that you're more stable in the corners because you have more weight up on the top end. I noticed that when I first picked it up, it seemed like it was really top heavy, and it's kind of a disadvantage when you're going, you know, from a stop on something like that. But as far as the corners, it's really nice to kind of lean it into the corners, kind of having a top-heavy bike a little bit, which is kind of interesting. The other thing is, look at the dash, how big the dash is. It's kind of hard to get used to such a big, solid dash. It's almost like you're in a car because you're kind of sitting behind a dashboard. You kind of get the feeling that you're in like a convertible or something with a really big dash in front of you, which is kind of an interesting experience. Kind of an interesting experience. All right, so let's see. We are going to turn here. And it's kind of interesting if I was in second gear. I guess second gear is good for those turns. Very interesting bike. Feels very solid in the corners, very solid, very super stable, which I like. The other thing that I don't like about this bike, the way it's set up, is, let's see if I can had like a mid-range slow speed crisis there. I almost needed to put my foot down. All right. That's kind of an interesting sound. Definitely has a different roar to it. It's kind of like a mid-range, all mid-range roar, which is kind of interesting. Alright, so one of the things I don't like about this bike is the air cleaner. It hits me right in the shin when I hit the back brake. So I go for the back brake and I get hit in the shin with the air cleaner. But just sitting here with my feet on the floorboards, cruising down the road, I don't feel it at all, no problem. And it seems like, as far as the suspension on this one probably has a better suspension than anything I've driven today, which is pretty nice. You can definitely still feel, it still feels like a cruiser, kind of the cruiser type suspension. You could probably still upgrade this to like some Legends or something like that. I actually have the Legend Revos on my bike, and those are like floating on air. Versus this is like a little bit stiffer. But yeah, this is nice. So solid in the corners. I love the corners on this one. You know, sometimes you go around the corners and you feel like you're a little unstable. This one feels really stable in the corners. Still feel a little bit of that buffeting. So, which I'm kind of surprised. It's not too bad. I hit one little spot where my head was kind of jumping around a little bit. Well, like kind of right here. It's moving my head to where it actually blurs my vision. This is actually the first bike where I've had really bad buffeting to the point where it's blurring my vision. So yeah, you definitely I think it's just because I'm a little bit taller than your normal rider. You know, at 6'4", you get above the windshield. The windshield is just kind of at the wrong kind of a height for me. Yeah, you can definitely tell when you pull up to stop, it's definitely kind of a top-heavy bike, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's because the fairing has some extra weight to it and it's kind of like pulling over the fairing. This is like super solid, that's kind of pulling over the top. It feels like it's more top-heavy than you would normally get just on a like the V-twin kind of a top heavy, because you know you kind of get the top heaviness from the V-twin. This seems like it's even more. I think it's just because that fairing is so heavy. It has an interesting sound. I can't decide if I like it or not. Because with the Harley Davidsons, you can change the sound, and I know with a lot of these you could just do a slip-on to some of these stock exhausts. You can do a slip-on exhaust just right at the end and really change the sound. And pretty stable on the highway, pretty smooth. The mirrors are interesting. It seems like it has smaller than normal mirrors. But you can, it almost seems like they're kind of tweaked out to where you can see more area with a really small mirror. It's almost looking like looking in one of those bubbles. So the blinker's kind of hard to get used to on some of these higher end Harley Davidsons, because I'm used to like the very bottom thing being the blinker. And on these, you actually have like the radio controls and stuff like that that's underneath the blinker, so you kind of have to think about where you're putting your thumb. So this kind of has an interesting stance to it. It's almost like, I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's the seat's too far back, or that I need to lean a little bit more forward, or exactly what it is on this bike. But it seems like I need to adjust it. Or it kind of puts a little bit of fatigue on my lower back just because of the stance on this bike. Pretty awesome bike, pretty smooth. $44,000 for this bike. It's kind of wild. All right, so we're gonna stop. I gotta get used to these floorboards. Let me tell you, I would much rather have pegs than floorboards. It just seems a little odd to have floorboards. I don't know why. But let me tell you, even at slow speeds, going around corners, it seems super stable. Slow speeds and high speeds, probably one of the most stable bikes that I've actually ridden. Except when you go really slow, like almost to a stop. Yeah, it's funny, some bikes are like super stable when you go really slow, like the Fat Boy and the Fat Bob, and this one seems probably the most unstable as far as like going down to like 1 mile an hour. Like it just wants to fall over, which is kind of an interesting experience. The other thing is that it doesn't really lean that far on the kickstand, which is another interesting thing about this bike. Alright guys, so there you go. That's the CVO Street Glide 2021 by Harley Davidson. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.